Hello again, and welcome to the Sports Report, the archived editions. I'm Packer Dave, along with John Poulter in Toronto. John, welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Dave. Always fun to chat with you.
All righty, and today we're going to talk about a team that went from 1968 to 1988 with one playoff win and 3 playoff appearances. Just desperate. It was a team that other teams would send their cast-offs to, a place where no one wanted to go and was wallowing in despair and anguish. John, can you guess the team?
Well, I know where you're from, and I know who your favorite team is, so I'm going to guess you're talking about Green Bay, Wisconsin.
It is the toilet paper capital of the world, Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's right, and those were the Green Bay Packers. After Vince Lombardi left, Phil Bankston failed. Dan Devine made one playoff appearance, lost to the Redskins in '72, failed. Bart Starr lasted for many years, 9 years. Got to the playoffs one year, 1982, and the strike to Dallas, and nowhere through the '88 season after that. Forrest Gregg a few years there after Bart Starr, and then Lindy Infante was hired in 1988. They had a dismal season, but in 1987, the Packers in the 10th round drafted Don Majkowski. He was a quarterback from the University of Virginia. He replaced Randy Wright in the starting lineup in the 1988 season, and in 1989 was the runner-up for NFL Offensive Most Valuable Player as a Green Bay Packer. The 1989 Packers were voted one of the top 10 fun teams in all of NFL history. And so, John, you've seen teams like this, right, that have wallowed in despair. Just your thoughts on a team like this starving for success.
Well, there's one in the town that I live in, Dave, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Last won the Stanley Cup in 1967, so that's over 50 years and counting. And while they've been close a couple of times and sort of teased us a little bit in the late 70s when the Lanny McDonald and Darryl Sittler days, and in the early 90s with the Doug Gilmour and the Wendell Clark days, we're still waiting for some success, and they haven't won a playoff series since 2004. So I can sympathize with you as your days as a Packer fan.
And the Leafs with some crushing defeats in elimination games. Must-win situations, and that's been tough for the Leafs. But let's move on here to what happened in 1989 with the Green Bay Packers. So Don Majkowski goes into that season pretty much an unknown quantity, kind of a flashy guy, had the blonde mullet, that was popular back then. They had some good players on the team, Chuck Cecil, defensive back, Tim Harris, linebacker, course, the great Sterling Sharp, whose career was cut short by injury, and running back named Brent Fullwood, who was pretty good. The biggest game of the season came on November 5th, 1989. It was called the Instant Replay Game. The Packers had not beaten the Bears in 8 consecutive tries. They were at Lambeau Field, and Don Majkowski throws a touchdown pass to Sterling Sharp with 41 seconds left to win the game. But the refs say no, he was over the line of scrimmage when he threw the ball. They replayed it and overturned the call at Lambeau Field. The Packers win. It was a big deal at the time, and the Bears still have an asterisk by that game in their media guide. Like they didn't really lose it, but they did. And they were the cardiac pack. 4 games were won by 1 point. Now, that's an NFL record. And Don Majkowski threw for he completed 353 completions of 599 attempts, 27 touchdowns, 4,318 yards. It led the NFL. And he also had 358 rushing yards with 5 touchdowns. So this was a good season. Majkowski was a star. He was known as the Magic Man. in Green Bay with a bright future. Young guy. Everything was going just fantastic. And the Packers were 10-6. The Vikings were 9-6 going into the Monday Night Football game, the last game of the regular season. If the Vikings lose, the Packers make the playoffs. If the Vikings win, the Packers are bounced from the playoffs. They had the Packer team with Majkowski and Sharp there at halftime, checking in with them. Ultimately, the Vikings won, and the Packers, unfortunately, didn't make the playoffs. But, it was a spectacular year. They finally had some hope, and that's what happened in 1989 with Don Majkowski, the Magic Man. So the Packers are in great shape now with their new coach, their star quarterback, their great receiver. So, John, what do you think happens after this wonderful season?
Well, if my memory serves me correctly, and it's a long time ago, they stumbled for a few years, and then eventually Mr. Favre came on board, and I guess it's fair to say the rest is history. Success kind of turned around, and all of a sudden we have the team that we now know as one of the top teams in the NFL and the playoff favorite every year.
Yeah, you are right about that. Going into the 1990 season, the Packers were doing well. They were, around 500. They're in the 10th game of the season, though. They were 4-5 going into that game. Buddy of mine and I decided we're going to go from Las Vegas, where I was working at a radio station there, to Phoenix to watch the Packers play the Cardinals. In 1990 in Arizona, it's pretty easy to get a ticket to a game. We sat in the gold section. Don Majkowski is a starting quarterback. And Packers are doing well. He's tackled out of bounds right down the row from us. Goes out of bounds, shoulder injury, leaves the game. They thought it was a bruise. Turned out to be a torn rotator cuff. Packers went on to win that game and the next game under backup quarterback Blair Keel, but then subsequently dropped the next 5 and wound up with a 6-10 record in 1990. They didn't fare much better in 1991. Majkowski was again off and on injured. And Lindy Infante was let go as the head coach. They brought in Ron Wolf as the general manager, Mike Holmgren as the coach. One of the first moves that Wolf made was to trade for Brett Favre from the Atlanta Falcons, sent the first-round draft choice there. But Majkowski started the 1992 season. They were in their second game. They had lost the first game, and they were way behind to the Buccaneers. And at this point, Holmgren thought he'd insert Favre. He benched Majkowski. And Favre came in, fumbled 4 times. The first pass he threw was deflected, came back to himself. But by the end of the game against the Cincinnati Bengals at Lambeau Field, in the last seconds, Favre throws a touchdown pass to Kittrick Taylor. They win the game, and Majkowski never sees the field again. Favre goes on to have his illustrious career. The Packers went 9-7 that year, didn't make the playoffs, but made the playoffs the following year. And, in 1989, Majkowski came out to Vegas where I was at. He came to some of the Packer, the Packer club that we used to go watch games at on satellite TV. He and Chuck Cecil made an appearance there. We saw the injury occur in Phoenix, and his career was never the same after that. After the 92 season, the Packers let him go. He spent a couple of years with the Indianapolis Colts, then 2 years with the Detroit Lions. Actually started a game for Detroit against Green Bay in Green Bay. The Lions lost badly to the Packers, and that was the Packers championship season. And after that, Majkowski was done. He had a long